Today, I'm going to talk to you about the upcoming 2024 election in the United States. And I'm not going to tell you who you should vote for or whether or not you should vote. What I'm going to tell you is that there's far more important things at stake right now than which candidate makes it into the White House. I'll tell you two things that I think are more important than which candidate you vote for. Number one is how we treat each other, how we treat people who have different political opinions than us. A big problem that I see all the time in my comment section, but it can definitely be found all across the internet and in real life interactions with people, is that we are so sure that we are right, that we villainize and vilify anybody who sees things differently. This shows a severe lack of empathy in the collective consciousness, an inability to understand that somebody who holds a different political viewpoint than you, that their reasons and experiences that led them to that place are just as valid as mine, as yours. The biggest issue by far that we need to work on in the United States is developing empathy and compassion for each other. We spend all of our time secluded in our homes, in our cars. It's so easy for us to see people in the car in front of us. It's just a car. We forget there's a human being inside there with emotions and experiences, joys and pain and suffering. The person in line in front of us at the bank that's taking too long. And we're standing there in line, emanating this energy of impatience and anger. And we sit behind our keyboards and type angry comments, intolerant comments towards anybody who has a differing political opinion than us. All of these things stem from the same problem, which is the inability to empathize with another human being, an inability to see our oneness with each other, an inability to understand that in every single person dwells the same consciousness, the same sense of I, the same sense of me, the same center point of consciousness that I have, that you have. It's all the same thing. We're all the same I. We all get to the decisions that we make because to us, it's valid. Our path leads us there. It's justified in our mind and by our experiences. It's the same for every single person. And so that's the first most important thing. Take down a notch the importance of whether or not your political opinion is right, whether or not my political opinion is right, and lift up the importance of how you treat somebody who has a different political opinion than you, how I treat that person. How we treat each other is by far more important than any politics. The second most important thing, and this is where I'm going to spend most of my time today, is that we do not give our power away to a political candidate or to anybody that's in office that holds power over us. The reason is because neither one of these candidates, no government official, can fix the problems that we are facing in this country. And there are a lot of them when you're looking from a human perspective. We have a physical health crisis in this country. We have a mental health crisis in this country. We have problems with the economy. We have problems with our medical system, our education system. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. But none of these problems can be solved by a government official. Is there anything wrong with voting for somebody who you feel has good values that are in alignment with your values and has good policy that you think will be able to take effective action? Of course not. And it's perfectly fine to do that. However, the issues that we're facing today do not originate with our leadership. Our leadership is a reflection of where we are at collectively. Our issues originate with our collective state of consciousness. Now, I could say that we have a consciousness problem. I've heard some people use this terminology, but I don't quite agree with that. I don't think that we have a problem at all. I think that we are just following the natural course of spiritual evolution. Just like we have evolved physically on this planet, we also evolve spiritually. And the two are actually very intertwined. The physical evolution flows naturally into the spiritual evolution. And right now, humanity is at a phase where we have developed self awareness. We are at the beginnings of developing empathy. Our consciousness is expanding to the next level, to that next level, when we will recognize our oneness with each other. And all the messiness that we see in the world today is just a natural part of that process. That's why, far more than arguing over who should be in office, we would be better directing our energy towards raising our collective consciousness level. I have spoken with many near death experiencers and spiritual experiencers who have explained that this physical world is a creation, a projection of consciousness. But it's not just the mystical and spiritual experiences that show us this. There have been a number of well known scientific studies, from the double slit experiment to the studies performed by HeartMath to the CIA gateway process to bioenergetic medicine. We create the world that we experience out of our shared collective experience. And I don't mean that you are literally creating this computer screen or mobile screen or this desk in front of you with your consciousness. That goes into a lot of metaphysics that I don't really want to get into here. But what I do mean is that we create our experience, whether or not we are in suffering or in bliss or somewhere in between. This is all created by the way that we are perceiving the world. And collectively, when the majority of people are suffering, are fearful, angry, irritated, lacking, unfulfilled, uninspired, then the world that we create out of that emotional state, out of that consciousness state, is going to reflect back to us where we're at. When the majority of people are suffering, are struggling to make it through the day, are struggling to stay physically awake, let alone spiritually aware, we become very easy to control. And that's why we have power structures in our world right now that are trying to keep us under their thumb so that they can continue to make money off of us. And this game that we play every 4 years with the election cycle, most of us would agree that we end up with two candidates who don't really represent anything that most of us actually want. So we choose between the lesser of two evils. And this is a game that is continually played to keep us distracted so that those in power can continue to do whatever it is that they want us to do. So rather than playing that game, rather than getting all emotionally caught up and who's right and who's wrong and which politics are correct and who's the better candidate, and then taking out that frustration on those who disagree with us, let's bring our energy back to ourselves. Let's call our power home to ourselves. Let's take back our power. Let's stop giving it to them and recognize our own ability to be our own savior. We don't need to look to a government official to save us. We can learn to raise our own consciousness level so that we are no longer at a state in which we are easily controlled, until we're no longer in a state where we feel like we need to look to someone else to govern us. That's why, regardless of who you vote for or whether or not you vote, here's 5 things that I recommend we focus our attention on, specifically as this election cycle plays out, and regardless of who gets elected into office. Number 1 is to live from a place of love. The small decisions that we are making every day throughout the course of our day en masse are far more important than who we vote for. It's even more important than who makes it into office, because whoever makes it into office is just one person, a person with a lot of power, but just one person. And there are billions of us on this planet, and all 8, however many billion there are of us now, are making thousands of decisions every single day about who we want to be, how we're going to conduct ourselves, how we're going to treat people. how we're going to handle interactions, what state of consciousness we're going to live in, how we're going to see the negative things that happen to us. Thousands of small decisions made by billions of people every single day add up to a tremendous amount of power. And we need to take that power back. And we need to start being intentional and in control of our own interactions, our own selves, our own state of consciousness. That's far more powerful than any one person in office who can make some executive decisions over the next 4 years. You have so much power just in one single day to get up and choose to be loving in every single interaction. Again, I'll bring it back to the near-death experience interviews that I've done. So many people talk about having a life review in which they're taken back in great detail through the life that they lived on Earth, and they experience it all again from their own perspective, but from the perspective of everybody that they interacted with, multiple viewpoints at once. And they're able to see the ripple of how their interactions affected everyone and everything else. And they always come to the same conclusion. The only thing that matters in this life is love. And it's the small acts of love and kindness they specifically see in their life reviews that they do when they think that nobody is looking and when there's nothing that they can get out of it, that make the most powerful ripple. We are insanely powerful spiritual beings. We create on an energetic level, and we can choose, regardless of how we may be feeling, to respond in love. It's a choice that we can make, and it is incredibly powerful. And if a critical mass of us starts to make millions, billions of small choices with pure loving intention, that will be far more powerful than any elected official. You can't control somebody that's living in a state of love because they don't need to be governed. Number 2 is envision the future that you want to create, the future that you want to see play out. Right now, so many millions of us have been programmed with this idea that we're in the end times and catastrophic things are going to happen. We grow up believing that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. I can't tell you how many times I heard that growing up. We're programmed with religion to believe that everybody is on their way to hell and that's what we deserve, and that it's too bad there's nothing that can be done. 90% of the world is just hopeless for those people. There's nothing that can happen to save them, and all these end times disasters are going to come upon us with God's punishment, and then the world will burn up and we're all going to hell. And that's the Christian version of it that I was raised with, but there's variations of this and many different worldviews. It all goes back to that collective consciousness thing. We are creating out of our energetic state, out of our consciousness state, and there is power in what we imagine and create with energy and intention. I mean, just look at somebody who's in the zone, who has their mind and heart set on creating a movie, a piece of music, whatever it may be. When you get set in that state and you are in the flow state, you are in the zone, that creation is going to manifest. It has to express. And it's the same with negative creations as well. When we have it set in our mind that a certain horrific ending is upon us and horrible circumstances are going to unfold, and we believe this with conviction, we can create those things and bring them upon ourselves. And especially when you have thousands of people believing the same thing, we have to get out of this mindset that peace is not possible on earth and that humans are not good people and that we don't have the capacity to live here in peace and harmony. We have to shed those beliefs. Of course, it's possible to have peace on earth. Of course, it's possible. If any one human can awaken spiritually and live from heart-based consciousness, then all of us can. And I would go so far as to say not only can we all, but we will, given enough time. I mentioned in the previous point about how evolution is a process and physical and spiritual evolution are intertwined together. If we look at how physical evolution has proceeded in our universe so far, we can go all the way back to the simple elements of air, water, earth, and fire. and how those elements danced together for how many billions of years before planets and stars and galaxies were formed. I'm not up to date on all the science of this, so forgive me if I get some technicalities wrong here. But we went from the elements to stars and planets to developing simple life forms of bacteria and plants, and then simple aquatic life forms that grew ever increasing in complexity until they crawled out and became land dwellers. And we have everything from the tadpole that crawled out of the water and became a frog all the way up to dogs and wolves and dolphins and animals who are incredibly conscious and beginning to develop a sense of self. And then we have humanity. Humanity has fully developed a sense of self along with an ego. If you look at most of the animal kingdom, animals don't have egos. They're not going to hold a grudge against you. They don't live in fear of being attacked. They're purely in the present moment. But the next stage of spiritual evolution is to develop a sense of self awareness. And that's where some very intelligent animals are at, and humanity is right in the middle of developing self awareness and understanding ourselves as a separate entity, a separate being, and all of the messiness that goes along with that. But I believe that we are on our way into the next evolutionary jump, which is when humanity expands our sense of self to include every living being that is also part of the one consciousness from which we all came. Now, evolution happens slowly over the course of millions of years, and this next evolutionary step is also happening slowly and painfully and messily. But as we begin to expand spiritually and we become aware of our creative powers and our collective creative powers, we can start to have some amount of choice in how this process progresses. If we continue to stay stuck in the egoic self-centeredness, then we're going to continue to perpetuate the suffering and the problems and the issues that we have in the world now. But the more we can take responsibility for ourselves and say, hey, we are all part of the same thing here. You have joy and pain just as I do. You have hopes and dreams just as I do. Your opinions are as valid as mine are. Let's show each other a little love, a little kindness. Let's develop empathy. Development of empathy is the next step. It is the step from egoic self-consciousness, self-awareness into oneness consciousness. The ability to understand that the other person is just as valid as you and to understand things from their point of view. The more that we can make that choice to be empathetic, to be kind, to be loving just for the sake of being kind and loving, the smoother our transition into the next state of consciousness, often called fourth density or oneness consciousness, will be. And this is where we will have the ability to create peace and harmony and live together in love on this planet. But we have to start thinking in these terms. As long as we don't believe a better world is possible, the longer we'll stay stuck in egoic self-centeredness. The longer we'll continue to create the same cycles of problems, the same power systems, the same control, the same domination, the same suffering, the same lack. All the things that we're experiencing now. Our transition will be a lot more rocky. It could take some shocking world events to really rattle us and wake us up. But if we start envisioning a better world now and creating this with the force of our consciousness and the power that each one of us contains, just like that person that is dead set on creating this piece of music is envisioning it night and day, and the music has to manifest because the vision of the artist is so strong. In the same way, we can create a better world, and we could do it overnight. That is a possibility. It could happen overnight if we had a mass awakening of consciousness. I really want to speak to the spiritual community in this one. There are so many people who are using teachings like law of attraction to create a better world for themselves, to create more money, more stuff, more happiness for themselves. Why don't we envision and create a better world for everybody? Why don't we raise the bar here? Why don't we envision and create and set our sights on a peaceful world in our energetic signature? If we could get enough people to do that, we could change the world overnight. Because, like I said, it's a consciousness issue. The problems that we see in the world around us are a reflection of a low state of consciousness. If we can raise our consciousness by envisioning and believing and intending for something better on a mass scale, the problems of the world could disappear literally overnight. Solutions would present themselves. Good people would step up. Corruption would be revealed. And these things are happening, but it could happen even more quickly with a lot less suffering if more of us would step into our power. Which is why, number 3, focusing on your own spiritual expansion is the best thing that you can do for the collective. As long as we are looking to a governing body to save us, we will continue to repeat the same cycles. The only reason that we even need to be governed from without is because we are not governing ourselves from within. This is a concept that could be difficult for some people to accept because we can't imagine a world in which we don't need outer governance. Our salvation, our enlightenment as a species, the next evolutionary leap will only come about when we've had a critical mass of people with internal change. All the world's major religions have had their own word for this: salvation in Christianity, nirvana in Buddhism, enlightenment, whatever the word may be. All of those belief systems are pointing towards this one thing, this mass shift in consciousness. Once we collectively experience this inner shift, from suffering to bliss, we will no longer need to be governed from without, because we'll be governed from within. We'll be living from a higher consciousness state of mind-heart coherence that literally experiences everyone else, every other living being, as part of oneself. So how could you harm another when you're only harming yourself? That's the state of consciousness that will create heaven on earth, the kingdom of heaven that Jesus talked about. I fully believe this is what he was referring to. That's the state of consciousness that will create paradise, peace, and harmony on earth and raise us out of the state of suffering. We, each and every one of us, have to choose right now to evolve, to rise above fear, division, and greed, to rise above ego and self-centeredness, to enter a higher state of vision where we can see that the universe is good, abundant, and safe, and start to live authentically from that place. When we realize that we are divine, we will no longer need to be governed from without, because we will be living from a place of ultimate compassion, peace, generosity, inspiration, authenticity, and on and on. We can wait for this evolution to happen naturally, because it will, and quite possibly through a lot of turmoil and suffering. Or we can choose to take charge of our own spiritual evolution today. Practically speaking, how do you do that? Do it however it feels right to you. There are so many paths that people have used to expand their consciousness. It could be through present moment meditation, mindfulness meditation. It could be through a gratitude practice. It could be through loving, just having a practice of love, to love everyone and everything. It could be through self-inquiry meditation. It could be through a decision to simply be in the moment and accept what is every moment of your life, to enjoy the experience and be in the experience of life. These are all paths that lead to the same place, an expanded state of awareness. Number 4, refuse to be divided. Refuse to be pawns in a chess game of political power. Don't play the game that those in power want you to play. Stop labeling people and see them as human beings. I know probably the vast majority of people watching this, I'm speaking to the choir. However, I have to delete comments all the time from people who are bashing other people of a different political persuasion. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge where people are at. I understand that a lot of people are very triggered because of what they've been through in their life and what people may have done to you. I know people personally in the LGBTQ community who have been so persecuted by those on the religious and political right, that they have a really hard time seeing anybody who would vote for Trump as a good person. I know people from other countries who have experienced socialism in other countries who have a really hard time understanding how anybody who would vote Democratic in the US could possibly be a good person with good intentions. And I'm not here to dismiss what anybody has been through. I'm not here to dismiss the experiences that have brought you to the point where you're at now, to the beliefs that you hold now. But I am asking you right now not to stay at that level and perpetuate the same cycles. Regardless of what you've been through, regardless of what people have done or said, we have the choice. I have the choice. You have the choice to continue or put an end to the cycle. So choose to end it. Refuse to play this game any longer. This is exactly what those in power want us to do. Stay divided and at each other's throats and distracted from the real issues. As long as you view another human being as your enemy, you cannot step into your own wholeness. You can't take bitterness and accusations and resentment with you into your wholeness. You have to let that go. Let it go for yourself so that you can be the most healed, embodied version of yourself that you can be, if for no other reason. And once you make that choice, I would not be surprised if all the reasons why you had judgments or accusations towards this group or that group or this person or that person kind of just fizzled out and disappeared and everything shifted for you, because that's the way consciousness shifts happen. Reality reflects what we're holding within ourselves. Finally, number 5, take compassionate action. From the state of consciousness that we are at right now, the problems in the world seem completely overwhelming. We have starving children. We have children being trafficked. We have the climate crisis, animals suffering and abuse, genocide overseas, physical and mental health crisis growing in America and across the world. We can't look to a presidential candidate to save us from any of this. We have to be the ones to make the difference. And no one person has to do anything massive, but a massive amount of people need to be taking their own personal steps and making their own personal contributions. Taking compassionate action means that you act out of a higher state of mind-heart coherence. It means that you don't act out of a state of fear, overwhelm, depression about what's happening in the world. Don't see yourself as a soldier fighting evil or a martyr laying down your life for the cause. That mindset creates more contrast. As long as we need an evil to fight to feel good about ourselves, as long as we need to be a martyr to feel good about ourselves, reality will continue to manifest that for us. If we want to see change happen in the world, we have to change within first. We each need to work on our own spiritual growth until we reach a state of consciousness where we can stay in a state of love authentically, not by bypassing the human emotions of anger, fear, whatever may come up, not by bypassing or denying those emotions, but integrating them and authentically being able to stay in a place of mind-heart coherence. When you're in that state and you look out at the world, you don't see enemies and evil. You see opportunities to create and spread love and joy. And then you act from that place, from a place of purpose. This is what I want to create. This is my contribution. This is my passion. This is what I get fired up to create and offer the world. Create from your wholeness. Create from your bliss. Create from your highest joy and offer that to the world. Every single person that is watching this video has a reason that they're here on the planet. And I don't mean some big purpose, some pre-planned and chosen career. I don't mean that it has to be something massive. I mean, what's your spark? To quote the movie Soul, what's your spark? What do you love? What would you do that you wouldn't even want to earn money doing because you love it so much and money would just tarnish it for you? When we can get 1,000,000 people just simply living in their zone, living in their flow, creating for the joy of creating, offering from their fire, that spark within them, whatever it is that they love, just giving it to the world in love and service, we will see massive changes in the physical reality that's reflected back to us. including the political systems and all the other systems that we have in place on the planet. When people step into their power, they call back their power, they live from a state of mind heart coherence, just making simple, loving choices every day and living from that place of joy, offering their spark to make the world a better place. The people in office won't have any problems to solve. If we could get millions, billions of people doing this, and it starts with each one of us, because every person to make that shift makes it easier for the next person because we're giving them permission to say, hey, we can do this a different way. You're not bound to live in suffering and misery your whole life. You don't have to do this. There's a better way. So I want to close out by just saying, what simple step can you take right now? One simple, loving thing that you could do for someone, and one simple step you could take for yourself to be a little closer to living in alignment with your joy and offering your creativity to the world. Be loved, be happy, be at peace, and thank you so much for watching. If you like what you heard in this video and want to hear more from me, follow my other channel where I share my own personal thoughts, teachings, and experiences.